Welcome to the Wednesday, October 18th, 2023 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. Let's see, can you call the roll, please? Sorry, I've got oh, I'm going to start that one off. So you don't say. All right. Do you need me to start it again? Nope. Okay. All right. I'll call the roll, please.
Jocelyn Epicillo. Here. David Gilbert.
Here.
Jennifer Harrison Wilson. Here. Dan Jasnow.
Here.
Courtney McCarthy. Hughes. Ted Schott.
Here.
Derek Harmony.
Here. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, I have accept agenda changes. The only suggestion I was going to make, Dan, I know you went to the resolutions. Do you want, we can have on the agenda, do you want to drop in while it's still fresh in your mind, a brief update, or do you want to wait till the next meeting? It's totally up to you. We can
Wait.
Okay, there we go. All right. Anybody else have any other agenda recommended changes? Okay. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. All right, we're going to move on to school board recognition. I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Well, good evening to our board members and audience. It's great to see so many people here this evening. I believe we have a number of people here to thank our school board for their incredible hard work and service to this community. And also we have people here to, I think, celebrate our principal, who we anticipate will be receiving tenure later in the agenda. But let me just say, for those who do not know, this week in New York State is School Board Recognition Week. And this was established really to raise awareness in communities for the work that school boards do. The people sitting around this room here this evening are here twice a month for several hours. We do a public meeting. We typically do an executive session, although we don't have one this evening. But to prepare, to take action, to vote on the various policies and budget decisions, many hours of hard work happen behind the scenes for them to be well informed and prepared. And that is time away from their work, their families. And, on behalf of the entire community, I just want to say what an honor it is to be back here working with all of you. You're an amazing board. I really meant what I said when I put out a communication back in September that I think you are a model for governance. I think we've done amazing work together over the last 3 years, and really that's attributable to the leadership of this board. A lot of times we don't recognize and understand even what they do, but what they do is critically important to the school district. So instead of me going on and on, I know our board loves to hear directly from our students. So I'm going to invite up our student government representatives. Riley Schott is our 8th grade class president. Sebastian Rasick is our 8th grade vice president. And Zoe Benares is our treasurer. And they have a few words of gratitude for the school.
Good evening, everybody. As you might already know, this week is School Board Recognition Week. So tonight we are gathered to celebrate our amazing school board members. I can say from experience, since I live with one of the board members, how much time and commitment goes into setting up the school. Being on the board means making very important and often difficult decisions and overseeing our school's community. So tonight is an opportunity to raise awareness of the important role our school board members play within the school district.
The Garrison School would not be the same without you, so we just wanted to acknowledge all of you for your hard work. We would like to hand out these certificates as a token of our appreciation. Thank you to Miss Sarah Tormey, Ms. Courtney McCarthy,
Mr. David Gilbert, Mr. Ken Schott, Miss Jocelyn Napisello, Mr. Dan Jasnow, and Miss Jennifer Harrison.
good
night.
I think that's the best school board appreciation. It's my tenure on the board. I really appreciate having students come out. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you, Zoe. Appreciate that. All right.
Now, I believe, Sarah, we also have Ms. Lauren Veneris and Harper Dion, our GSEP president and PTA president, who would like to say a few words.
Hi, I'm Lauren, and I am the president of GSEP.
I'm Harper Dion, president of PTA.
And both of us just wanted to express how tremendously grateful we are for all of you. And we recognize that the work you do is so critical and it's so hard. And we just want you to know that we recognize how much time and energy and love that you put into our school and our district. And in many ways, it's a thankless job that you do, but please know that we thank you and that we are so appreciative of you. And also one of the things that we admire the most about you is that you're a board of very different people with very different opinions and different perspectives, and different experiences. But in every single dealing that we have had with all of you, you have treated each other with so much respect and civility and camaraderie that it sets a really beautiful example for the rest of us and for the boards of both GSEP and PTA. So we just wanted to say thank you. We admire you, we respect you, and we love you.
Thank you.
I would say it's a thankless job. So far we've got
Plants.
thank the apple butter. That's the best so far.
Most of the time it's like this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you to my fellow board members. I appreciate all of you always. Next, we have a very exciting item, the award of tenure and the tenure recognition. First, we will do the motion. Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby award tenure to Ms. Allison Amay, principal in the tenure area of principal, effective November 2nd, 2023. May I have a motion, please?
So,
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? We'll now move to the recognition of the award of tenure to Principal Amay. Carl, podium's all yours.
Okay. So I've prepared just a few brief comments about my colleague Allison Mig and her wonderful work over the past 3 years. And I did write them down because it's been a busy 3 years, Allison. And I had to give this a lot of thought and reflection to kind of try to summarize and capture all that you did in our district. So I'm delighted to acknowledge Allison and Mig's remarkable leadership and significant contributions during her 3-year tenure period here in Garrison. Mrs. Mig joined our district in November of 2020 amidst challenges of a pandemic, and we were very eagerly anticipating her arrival. I was counting the days because I was here alone. Prior to working in Garrison, she served as a principal at BOE for 4 years. She also was awarded tenure. Prior to that, she had many years, I believe 15 or 16, in Louisboro as an outstanding special education teacher. She also had some leadership training there as well. But over the past 3 years here in Garrison, Mrs. Mig has consistently demonstrated exceptional leadership across various critical areas. Her tireless efforts in building strong relationships within our school community and establishing herself as a respected leader have not gone unnoticed. Notably, she was a key member of our Strategic Coherence Planning Committee, which played a pivotal role in defining Garrison's vision of a graduate. His vision has served as the cornerstone guiding our district's alignment of systems to promote student success, and has helped to ensure that our actions and initiatives are well-informed, purposeful, and effective. I'd like to take a moment just to highlight some of Mrs. Mig's most significant accomplishments. Elevating curriculum and instruction by researching and implementing the K-8 Envisions, or now it's pre-K through 8 Envisions mathematics program. It is aligned with the state standards. We are seeing tremendous gains in our students' math performance. That was a collaborative effort, but Mrs. Mig provided the leadership, and the staff, I think, is really settled in with this program, and we expect continued growth. Enhancing evidence-based reading instruction in our primary grades through her support and professional learning that she provides to the staff, and her daily visits in our classrooms, giving feedback constantly. You've heard a lot about balanced literacy and the lack of evidence-based reading. Mrs. Mig was way ahead of that curve. Before that made the New York Times and other news, she was here working with our teachers, understanding that phonetics and direct reading instruction was necessary with our younger children, and that work continues. Also, we have, for our second year, a highly successful pre-K program. We have a lot going on, but when that opportunity presented itself, Mrs. Mig immediately embraced it, and has been supportive of that program in the design phase and the implementation phase, and now the support phase, and it's thriving, and I think it's something the community can all be very proud of. She also did a lot of work on revamping our RTI program, response to intervention, which really is early intervention for children who may be struggling academically, or even, with behavior or some self-discipline. And this is, the whole idea of this is early intervention is always the most effective, as opposed to waiting for children to struggle further. And that program is in place and working very effectively. Also, just overall raising the bar on academics, and kind of shift to middle school. In the past, Garrison had always offered Regents courses, which are high school level courses, to our 8th grade students. However, a smaller percentage of our students participated in these courses. Roughly every year, 50% would take the 2 Regents courses. But we set a goal, not alone, but in collaboration with the middle school faculty. And Mrs. Mig led this initiative to have 100% of our 8th graders take living environment Regents exam. And it's been incredibly successful. This is the second year of that. And also we've seen an increase with 8th grade algebra Regents. Again, we're roughly 50%, now well over 2/3 of the class take that class. The past 2 years, we've had 100% passing, and that's also been a tremendous success. So I think, raising the bar, setting a high bar, we watched our students basically rise to the occasion, and that's been wonderful. Also, to support that, she reworked our schedule. We used to have a 9-period schedule. Now it's an 8-period schedule. This was a really big challenge in a small school. But the goal was to give the teachers, because they were asking for it, more instructional time in the core academics. They used to have 42 minutes. Now they have 51 minutes. Doesn't sound like much, but over the course of a school year, that is 27 hours of additional academic instruction. And that was no easy feat, but right now there is an 8-period schedule and it's working really well. We're seeing results. Also, the district implemented a pre-K through 8 environmental education program, which I can say that you heard a bit about this at the last meeting from Mrs. Arbor. Of course, you know, she is the driving force, but Mrs. Amig has been so supportive of this program from day one, and it is very unique. Many districts do not have an environmental education program. There's not even a certification for it at the New York State level, which I think will change at some point because it is absolutely essential that we are teaching this to our children in this day and age. Furthermore, Mrs. Amig has done work and led our building level DEI team. They've done a lot of great work with professional development and learning about our literature, our classroom resources, as well as just creating a warm and welcoming environment to all students. And you see that every day, just anyone who's in this building understands that that is the case. She deserves commendation for her work in enhancing our special education process and expanding our special education program offerings. Her close collaboration with our teachers and psychologists, guidance counselors, support staff ensure that students with special needs receive the necessary support and accommodations to be successful. She's championed a culture within the special ed department that truly embraces the concept of least restricted environment. Those words have been laws, but I would say that Mrs. Amig and our teachers and our special ed department really embrace that. Evidence of that is recently, Mrs. Amig reached out to Haldane School District, the director of special ed there, Regina Cashian. Ah, Regina, good to see you. And together, these two very ambitious leaders realized that there was an opportunity for a partnership. And that partnership has flourished. There was a lot of planning that happened last year, a lot of meeting with parents and analyzing evals and IEPs to make sure this was a good match and a good fit for both districts. So this year, I'm proud to say that Garrison launched a special ed program at the elementary level in partnership with Haldane, and it is off to an amazing start. And I anticipate it will just get better and better and continue to grow. But kudos to both of you on that one. Mrs. Amig consistently places the best interest of our children at the basis of every decision she makes. And I can say firsthand, we work so closely together in such a small district that I see this day in and day out. Her warmth, her dedication, and her passion for her work have been inspiring. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Mrs. Amig, her family, who are here this evening, her husband, Mark. Welcome.
Right here.
Her exceptional leadership has really contributed immensely to the success of the school over the past 3 years. Congratulations once again on your tenure.
Thank you. I'm not gonna shake your hand. Thank you. I'm shaking. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to first say thank you to the board because it's board recognition night as well. And I wouldn't be here, standing here tonight if it wasn't for the Board of Education for recognizing, you know, whatever talents you saw in me and interviewed me. And I appreciate that so much. And I just so appreciate the support that you have given me throughout the past 3 years here. I can't do any of this without your support and without your acknowledgement and your just you cheer me on. I can feel it. I feel that from you. I just want to also thank Carl. Carl, you have been Mark knows this, right? Mark, my husband, Mark, I come home every single night after work and he and I speak leadership. Like we talk the same language. He's a leader, I'm a leader, but we always talk about who's the most inspiring leaders that, you know, really touch me and have touched my life as on my leadership journey. And it's Carl. Carl, hands down, you have been so instrumental in my own personal growth. So I cannot thank you enough. I learned so much from you. I just want to now thank my family because my family's here. I wish all of them were here. Sorry. But Mark, my husband and I have been together a long time. Been over 30 years. And he's seen 5 tenures. This is my third. Like tenure again. 30 because I in Katona and I have my Katona friends here, my best friends. Yeah. I'm here for the Katona Lewisboro. They saw my journey as well. Mark has been with me since I'm a kid. And we got engaged down the street. I tell the story all the time. And he knew that this was the building that I wanted to work in when I was engaged to Mark at 21. We were at the Bumbush Inn and he proposed and we passed by this school. And I said to Mark, I'm going to work there one day. And I'm here today. And that was when, 1995 when we got engaged. So, you know, Mark has been by my side the whole way here, you know, where I'm standing today. And you saw just the progression. My friends from Katona Lewisboro have inspired me throughout, you know, my journey here, strengthening my instructional lens and my approach and cheering me on into this like leadership journey. When I thought I couldn't do it, they were like, yes, you can, and you're going to do it. And I went to BOCES. And so I'm so grateful for, you know, my history with my teacher coaches and my teacher friends who have become my best friends. And then of course, naturally, you know, my BOCES friends and that BOCES experience really honed my instructional practice and what I believe kids really need and all kids need somebody who's just going to stand by their side and just love them throughout it all because it's messy. You know, we're part of like raising your kids in some degree, right? You work with them all day long and it can get messy at times and it can be really hard and challenging and it tests your patience, but at the same time, it is so incredibly joyful to watch when kids learn and you see the sparks and the light bulbs go off and you see that the connections are being made. And it's just nothing more joyous than watching kids learn. So thank you to the parents that are out there supporting my journey and letting me, you know, be a part of your children's lives. Your children are everything to me. When I step foot in this building every day, it doesn't matter what happened 10 minutes prior, whether it's in the car and I'm like I step foot in the door and it's game on. It's all about your children. They just mean the world to me. The teachers here are exceptional. The teachers are the driving force behind this big machine here. Without the teachers, we really have like nothing. So like I hear all these wonderful things that you're saying about me, Carl, but like it's really about the teachers who are driving this and the support that we give and the board gives to teachers so that the teachers can do their job, which is to love the kids first, welcome those kids with open arms and smiles, support them through, you know, the ups and downs and the messiness of teaching and learning and growing, the conflicts that they endure and the you know, amazing things, the triumphs that happen throughout the day. It's the teachers. The teachers do it all. And I'm just behind them like, go, go, go. Like I cheer them on. And it's just like, that's the best part of my job. So thank you so much. I cannot forget one of the most two important people who practically raised me, my mother and father-in-law, who are here today, Marie and Bob, who are, I call them mom and dad. They practically raised me when I was a teenager. And so they raised me. So I attribute my success because they helped me get here today. So thank you to everybody, Regina in the back. Thank you to the partnership that we created for our students. It's like so awesome, Regina. I'm so proud of what we're doing and what the teachers are doing for the kids. And the kids, the most important part, I cannot thank you enough. The kids are the best part of what we do. So thank you for all the kids who are in here today. I know I'm going to ramble, and I will.
Are there any restricted, I'm sorry guys, but you have jump in if you have any other questions. Are there any restricted lines that other districts are using that we are currently not using that
There may be an odd one here or there, but no, these are the main ones: ERS, TRS, employee benefits, future capital projects, and debt service.
Thank you.
Those are the main ones. You know, there may be some unique that were passed. I think some have a liability and casualty reserve, right, for possible claims of lawsuits. So if you have a lawsuit pending, and I'm trying to think of the 6N, 6R, and workers' comp. No, I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, the 4% is 4%, the 4%.
Of your ensuing year's budget.
So that'd be 4%, 12, or
We have, yeah, we have the calculation in the back of the book. So that amount would be. Oh, well, you're at 11%, so it'd be about third of that, about 450,000. So again, a lot of that money is one-shot deals that you didn't plan on, and you have to do something with it, and you know you've been using it to keep your taxes at a fairly level rate.
Some of it was anticipated because we didn't know last year.
Yeah, we didn't know for certain.
Money came in at like, what, in June?
Yeah, FEMA came in June, and there was also one of the things that helped on the expenditure side, a grant for mental health professionals that was related to the COVID, and that was something that we found out about in December of 22. So long after the budget was developed and adopted, we were able to get another reduced 130,000 of expenses from that. So there's a number of things that really broke our way.
And that would have come out of the instruction line, correct?
Yes.
Any other questions, guys?
And the last slide, just very quickly, or next last slide. Like I said, you do have some other fund balances. The capital fund has a balance of 492,000 in it, and that's just bonded money that you haven't expended yet. Projects aren't complete. You have your school lunch fund, which has no activity at $3,000 left in it, and your special purpose fund, which includes your extra classroom activity, and those funds again are restricted. It's only on the extra classroom and then any donations you make recently. So those funds are restricted and obviously not included in the general.
And that special purpose there, that is the one that includes yearbook.
All the extra classroom,
Create
yeah.
class fund,
Yes.
all of that.
That's the
And
bulk
there's
of the money.
some money there that we could make plans for.
Well, I think the clubs have to make plans.
The clubs have to make
Yes.
plans.
So the student government.
Which is separate from the eighth grade. Eighth grade is one
Correct.
fund, student government. is
Student government is a separate one. It needs an advisor appointed to it for it to be able to function. And then once that's functioning, the student government can decide what to do with all the funds in the clubs that have been dormant for.
Just like the education, the environmental education fund, the drama club, they're all sitting with money there. That was one of my favorite parts of the special fund part.
And then the last is again, district debt service. You only have the one bond outstanding, and that's the amortization schedule. So again, only one bond and a fairly aggressive pay down schedule. 75% of it being done in 10 years. So that's, I mean, again, if you go out for another bond in the future, Moody's would look favorable on the pay down schedule.
We got a good rate on this one too. Before the rates really went up,
Yeah.
like 2%, right?
It's just over 3.
Just over.
Yeah.
Now they're probably mid 5s to 6. So again, the district had a very good year, and we thank you very much for allowing us to come in and do the presentation. We'd like to thank Joe and his team. Dan, you can't do the audit without the team behind you. And Mark and his group did a good job in trying to get it done. Again, very appreciative.
Thank you. I think it was more comfortable this year now. The building wasn't under construction. Yes, a little more fun to come in and look at all our paperwork.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Chris and Mark. Do I have any other questions, follow-up questions from the board?
I just wanted to thank Mark. I was on the committee this year for the first time. And you did an excellent job
Thank you.
presenting tax.
And I'd like to thank Genevieve, because without her, I wouldn't be able to get all the stuff done on time that needs to be done. So.
Again, thank you very much. And again, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to just reach out. we can be back in another meeting if something comes up. So
Good.
we're not that far away.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you all.
All right. Move on to. Oh, now we get to accept the external audit report. All right. We resolve the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the external audit report for the 2022-2023 school year as presented by PFK O'Connor Davies Accounting Firm. May I have a motion, please?
Okay.
Have any other
I
questions?
just have a question of whether we could ask Joe to make some recommendations to us as to, maybe at a future meeting, where he would recommend we could move some of the fund balance to cover our reserves from that we could need it in the past.
Yes, we will definitely make some recommendations, and we'll also discuss them with the finance.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. And also, I mean, I know we discussed an audit too, but I'd love to see a plan for the special classroom fund to really get those funds moving, whatever we need to do in terms of board action to help. I think it would be useful instead of just sitting on money. Well, she's 8th grade, so there's supposed to be another, this is what's interesting, okay? And if you go into the, I don't know if you all have the spiral, but you'll see all the different accounts, sorry. But there's the 8th grade fund, and then there's the student government. So student government needs like an official advisor, and then the goal is for them to like learn about the finances. But under that is an environmental club, a drama club with like $6,000. Environmental club has like $8,000 sitting there. But none of that money can be accessed until the student government is running. But the 8th grade fund is completely separate. And
I think there is a
always do
student
that.
government running because she.
But they don't have the advice. It's not.
It needs an
It has to legally has to have the advisor in order to access the money. So regardless of what the students do or put together, they need the advisor in order to make it happen.
Should have Joe do it. Yes.
I think it has to be a teacher though, right?
It's
It has
a
to be
faculty
applicant.
member.
Yeah, there's actually a fair number of restrictions on how we can access the money.
Because it needs to be, it's supposed to provide a teaching experience for students, for them to learn how to operate an organization and how they handle money. So the students are supposed to actually handle all the money and do the activity. Advisors, they're supposed to make sure that they're on the right path, but the tone is set by the students that are in it.
There's also a youth center club with $1,400 and some fun things. But we can't pay for the stipend for, say, an advisor out of this either. It has to come from our general budget.
Yeah.
So that's something we would need to make a plan for and budget for as well. These are the fun things we learn in audit committee.
We do have funds within the budget that we could probably transfer to locations to be able to pay for stipends and things like that.
All right, we're still on accepting this report. I think it's great. I would love to see that as well. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions before we move to a vote on the external audit report? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. All right, next up, we have a tax impact report for possible merger annexation. I'm going to invite Carl and Joa to kick off this presentation. Do you guys want questions out, or do you want to hold them till the end of the board?
Question.
Okay.
Okay, hold this up. Thank you.
Just prefaces, this is what the board has asked for in August, so. All right, Carl.
Okay, I'm just going to kick this off and then really turn it over to Joe. Just to recap, and the board is aware of this, but we have some community members here this evening. At our summer retreat back in July, the board requested the presence of one of our attorneys who has a lot of expertise in school district mergers, Pat Fitzgerald. So Pat did a great job of bringing us through all the legal steps that need to be taken if 2 or more districts are interested in a consolidation or annexation. And those 2 words are key. In New York, we have Union Free School Districts, we have Central School Districts, we have City School Districts, and there are different rules for different types of districts. The two choices for Garrison being a union-free school district are consolidation and annexation. Basically, centralization is one type of merger where two or more districts, could be three, could even be four, are dissolved and an entirely new school district is created. So employees basically are out of work temporarily and then are hired back by the new district. Seniority in a case like that counts. The school board is dissolved, and then the voters would elect new board members. So it's an entirely new entity. To be a little more specific, teachers of the former district would become employees of the new district. However, if teaching positions are abolished, then seniority goes into effect, okay, based on tenure area. Now those are the rules that basically apply to an individual district as well. Annexation is another form of merger. Our attorney thought if we were considering, for example, a merger with Haldane, that annexation probably would make more sense. And basically what happens is the annexed district is dissolved and it becomes part of the annexing district. In our case, Garrison would be the annexed district. Haldane would be the annexing district. Haldane would still exist. We would become simply part of Haldane. The Garrison board in a case like this would be dissolved. However, the voters of Garrison would have the ability to run for the board in the future if seats were up. The voters also could vote in school board elections and district budget elections, or district budget votes, I should say. The collective bargaining agreements of the annexed district cease to exist, basically. All staff would go under the collective bargaining agreements of the annexing district. Okay, in our case, that would be Haldane in that scenario. Teachers in the annexed district do not have seniority or bumping rights. So what does this mean? In a scenario where Garrison would be annexed into Haldane, for example, even if you had seniority, if there was a need to access teachers, the Garrison teacher would automatically be accessed, even if they had seniority. Same would hold true for all positions. Civil service has some slightly different rules, but administratively, same situation basically. So if a central office position in Garrison had 10 years of experience and in Haldane, that same central office position had 1 year of experience, Haldane bumps the Garrison employee. So those, I believe, are important considerations for us. Those seem to be the only two choices. And I think they're an important part of this discussion because there's a significant impact. What are the tax impacts of consolidation or annexation? For this part, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, who will discuss the numbers.
Sure. Thank you, Carl. So what we want to do is we want to take a look at what would happen when districts would be consolidated or be annexed to the taxes. That was the kind of the marching order that we got from the board as far as, well, what does this mean? Because obviously there's changes that occur when you annex a district or consolidate them. So you would merge the tax levy into one tax levy, and you calculate a new tax rate. And you have to calculate the new tax rate for all the towns that make up that entity. And then the taxes increase for some taxpayers and decrease for others. So typically what would happen is if the pre-merger district, the district that had the lower rates, everyone that was in the district that had the lower rates would have their taxes would go up. and everyone in the district with the higher rates, their taxes would go down. Okay, so it's kind of important to kind of quantify that, so that's what we're doing here. So the rates for Garrison, we have two towns in Phillipstown, or two towns in Garrison. One is Phillipstown and one is Putnam Valley. They have different equalization rates, which means that equalization rate is basically the percentage of the full value that the property is assessed at. So in Phillipstown, the equalization rate in Garrison is 35%, and for Putnam Valley, it's equalized at 100% of the full value. So the tax rate for residents who live in Phillipstown is $24.03 this year, and then Putnam Valley, $8.48. And for Haldane, Phillipstown tax rate for this year is $39.98. Putnam Valley, $14.08. Fishkill, $14.09. And there's the same equalization rates there. And Fishkill also has equalization rate of 100%. Okay, this is what the tax rates are for Putnam Valley School District. If we're looking at all the districts that we could possibly merge with or be annexed by, you have to be contiguous to Garrison. So the only ones that could possibly be is Putnam Valley or Lakeland or Haldane are the only ones that we could combine with. So we'll also look at the rates for Putnam Valley for this year. The equalization rates are a bit different. So they have three towns: Carmel, $21.36 per thousand assessed value, and then Putnam Valley, $20.80. And they have Portland, which is the equalization rate is 1.34%. So the properties are assessed at 1% of the full value. So that gets you a really strange rate of $1,739 per thousand of assessed value. Okay, now Lakeland has a lot more towns in it, and these are all the rates that are associated with them. So you have quite a range. Obviously, the Putnam Valley or the Putnam County school towns have significantly lower rates because of the equalization rate is much different than the ones in Westchester County. The other thing that happens with Lakeland is the Westchester County schools also have a portion of the sales tax gets factored into it at the end, so you have to take that into account, and it basically lowers the rate by the amount of sales tax it is. Okay, and the board in what I just handed out a few minutes ago, you basically have the tax levies for all of the districts are in the handout that I gave you. So you can see what they look like and what the rates are, and the rest of Putnam County are also in there. So we just wanted to kind of add this about the library taxes. If we could consolidate school districts together, that doesn't necessarily do anything with library taxes. And the libraries receive funding from multiple sources, but some of the library support is from taxes that are levied on behalf of the library that the districts collect.
I just have a question there. So should you say Garrison be annexed by Haldane, on the tax bill for Garrison residents, they would continue to see a different amount for the library than the school tax? Because those bills go up, that's part of your tax bill when you pay school taxes, it's library tax. That would be different for Haldane, saying that we virtually the other way.
Right. Yeah. So for example,
So that would maintain the district. It would basically be by the same district lines. So the school district, or how is that decided?
well, the library district would stay the same. So the library district for the Hamilton Fish Library is Garrison, and then the library district for the Haldane, the Butterfield one, it would be over there. So, for example, the Butterfield Library gets 225,000, I think, through Phillipstown, and then they also get 73,000 through a bill that is part of Haldane's bill. So it depends on the individual library as to what it does, but based upon what we know, and that you can't, if somebody's already paying for a library, you can't put another library on top of it would pay for. So that's why they would just stay the same.
Yeah, question on the rates versus the equalization rates.
Mhm.
So obviously the equalization rates are sort of all over the place in the towns. Can we still make a one-to-one comparison? And like when we're looking at the tax rates, is it still safe to say that, property owner in Phillipstown is going to be paying $40 per thousand of value, even if there's a very different equalization rate, say like Cortland, would it still be the same? You'd just be paying $1,000 or $1,700 for 1,000.
Yeah. So,
or does the equalization rates throw everything out of whack for a one?
well, the equalization rates do change how things happen year over year, especially as they change. Sometimes towns and the assessors will change the equalization rate, and that will can change how it's apportioned between the towns. But essentially, when you calculate the tax levy, what you're doing is you take the assessed value of all the properties, and then you convert them all to full value. And if you look at the spreadsheets that are there, you convert them all to full value, and then you split up the tax levy based upon the percentage of full value from the total. And that's why what you'll see is, in a lot of cases, when we look at the combinations, the increases and decreases are similar. Like if you combine with Lakeland, for example, you'll see that the decreases to their tax rates kind of go the same way all the way across. The only thing that changes is when there's a difference in equalization rate of the same town from one levy to another. So you'll see that in a minute. So, all right. So, just to kind of for information, so the library tax rates that Haldane collects, which is not necessarily the same that Phillipstown collects for the Haldane Library, but this is what Haldane collects on behalf of the library, is 73,150, which is 13 cents per thousand Phillipstown, and 4 cents per thousand in Putnam Valley and Fishkill. And then Putnam Valley has a library tax of 460,000, which is 24 cents for those that live in the town of Carmel, 22 for Putnam Valley, and $19.85 per thousand for those that are poor. And that's because of that 1% something equalization rate. And then for Garrison, the library tax levy that Garrison collects on behalf of the library is 300,000, which is 67 cents per thousand for Phillipstown and 23 cents per thousand for Putnam Valley. Okay, so what you do when you combine districts together is you have to make some assumptions. So one of the things that you can make is when you combine two districts together, you can save some money on central administration. So you're eliminating the cost of one board, you're eliminating the cost of a superintendent, business official, treasurer, a board clerk, all the centralized stuff. You might eliminate a special education supervisor or something like that. So when you add all those costs together, maybe you get to $1 million worth of savings. So in the analysis that we're looking at here, each case, essentially what we're doing is we're taking the tax levies of the separate organizations adding them together and taking out $1 million of savings in order to calculate out what the resultant tax levy.
What does it with these after legacy contracts paid out? Does that mean if we had a contract with, say, a principal and we didn't carry that principal over into the annexation, you have to pay out the contract?
Yes, you may, depending upon how the contracts are written, for the people that have individual contracts, so the management type people, depending on how they're written and what the legal structure of them are, you may have to pay out the remaining years on the contracts for those positions. Depends on how they're written.
In all these scenarios, are you assuming that this building would remain open?
Yeah, we're assuming that you would still educate someone here. We don't necessarily talk about what that would be, but you would have the cost of running the building and having teachers in it. Because that's why, you know, you're not looking at more savings, you know, than that, because the most significant part of the operation is obviously your teaching staff, and that's where the costs all are. So you can't save, you know, $4 or $5 million for you know, closing one district or anything like that. So, all right, so that's what all the numbers are based on. And then what we can do is we can take a look at individual districts, and when you combine the two of them, what would the resultant tax rates be, depending upon where you lived and what combined to.
Can I ask another question before you keep going?
Yep.
So I know the board has in front of it the 1999 financial analysis. Was the same logic used in their analysis in terms of keeping this building open and removing about $1 million or removing the central office line equivalent?
They didn't recognize any savings when they looked at the analysis, I don't believe.
Thank you.
So they just flat combined them. But I think it would be likely that you would get some savings. So this is best case things.
But if you're going to merge these districts, and one of them, with the main one next, has excess capacity in terms of room for kids, why wouldn't you utilize that?
Nobody does.
What?
None of our neighboring districts have capacity.
We have space. They don't have
Yeah,
space.
we're the
They
ones
want
who
to build it.
They're us.
They're gonna want to keep our building.
We're gonna need our building to
Yeah.
educate. Different districts that have it.
Okay, so if you combined Haldane with Garrison, these are what the new rates would be. So the Phillipstown rate would be $31.87. Putnam Valley rate would be $11.23. Fishkill $11.23, and that's a total tax levy of $31,875,380.
Joe, can I just ask, so my understanding is that these rates, and you might address this later on, they don't necessarily kick in the year of annexation. Is that correct? And then,
Well, we'll talk about the incentive aids and what that means, but this rate would be it would be at least as high as this, if not higher, in year 2. So there's reasons for that, but I'll get into that when we get a little further on.
and does that account for the allowances for phasing in of tax rates?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so it's 31.87, 11.23, and 31 million. Okay, if you lived in Garrison, and you lived in Phillipstown, your taxes would increase 33%, going from $24.03 to $31.87. And if you lived in Putnam Valley, you would increase 32%, $8.48 to $11.23. Okay, and the residents of Haldane, if you lived in Phillipstown, it would decrease by 20% what your taxes you would pay, because they're normalizing to the new rate. And Putnam Valley would decrease by 25% and Fishkill by 20%. Okay, if you combined Putnam Valley with Garrison, because Putnam Valley's rates are significantly higher than Albane's rates, you have a much different picture. So the new combined rate would be $47.52 for Phillipstown, $14.94 for Putnam Valley, $15.34 for Carmel, and $1,249 for Portland, and a total levy of $50 million. So if you break that down, that would increase that would double taxes for the residents of Garrison if you combine with Putnam Valley. So go $24 to $47, $8 to $14.95. And for the Putnam Valley residents, it would decrease their taxes by 40%. And then if you combine Lakeland with Garrison, you get kind of similar numbers. So you see there, it'd be $48 for Phillipstown and $16.95 for Putnam Valley, for a total levy of $133,513. And that would be that would double the rates as well. And then because the size of the tax levy is so large for Lakeland, their rates wouldn't change that much because we're just a small piece in that overall pie of 133 million, right? So their rates would decrease 10 or 11% depending upon where you're at. Okay, so Dan, this gets back to your question about, okay, aren't there incentives that the state gives you for merging to offset some of these cost differences? And yes, there are. So you get a 40% increase in basic aid for the first 4 years, and it decreases to 36% in year 5, and then it reduces down to, by year 14, it goes to 0%. Okay, so basically what you do is you take the foundation aid for both districts and you add them together in year 1, and then you add 40% on top of it. So for example, if you added Albane's number together and Garrison's number together, and then you added a 40% on top of it, the 40% would be 1.6 million. Okay, but or 1.3 million. Sorry, there's the numbers. So what that would do is that would change the first year rate from what I showed you before, without that number, from 33% to 27%. So your first year rate, when you factor that aid in, reduces the increase for the first year to 27% instead of 33%.
Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yep. So you add 1.3 million on top, and you basically reduce the tax levy by 1.3 million, and that changes it from 33 to 27.
So essentially the rate is the rate, the tax rates of the combined or annexed district. But
well, the rate would go down because if you don't need to raise the money from the tax levy and you're getting it as aid, you can just go reduce the tax levy by that whole amount.
so when you say it, just so I understand this, so when you say that as of year 2, the tax rates for the annexed district would go up to whatever they would be, but that would be reduced by the additional foundation aid that we'll see. Is that
Right. Well, yeah. So instead of in year 1, once they're combined together, that you have a 33% increase in year 1, once you factor in this aid, the additional 1.3 million, and you reduce the tax levy by 1.3 million, it changes the increase to 27 instead of 33. So that's just year 1. Okay. So now year two is different. Year two, essentially what you have to do is you have to recalculate what the foundation aid rate would be for the new combined district. This is where things get tricky. So what happens is the combined district then has different financial information than the separate districts do. And you're blending the things together that affect the rates and how much foundation aid you get. So you basically combine the district together and calculate a new rate for foundation aid. And then whatever that is, you add 40% of whatever that is to the top. So what we provided to the board is a copy from the 1999 schedule, and where they looked at the 1999 report where they looked at what this combination would do. And what it shows is because the relative wealth of the two districts are so dissimilar, that when you combine the two of them together, then you end up with what's called a flat foundation aid amount, and it significantly decreases the amount of foundation aid you get. So that every year after year one, you're ending up with less aid than you had when the districts were apart. Even with that 40% incentive, you're still now lower than what the aid was when the two districts were apart. So the second year, I don't have a calculation for what the second year would be, but likely would be higher than the 33% that we showed, because you're starting with less money. So one of the things that we're talking about is the disparate wealth of the two districts. So there's something that's called, that the state uses to determine how they factor out in your foundation, and it's called the combined wealth ratio. You say, well, what's a combined wealth ratio? What's that mean? And in basic part, it is the adjusted gross income of the residents per pupil, and it is the property wealth per pupil. And you put them together and you come up with a ratio. And an average, they set the average district at a 1.0, right? So in 1997, actually, from when these numbers are from, Garrison had a combined wealth ratio of 2.7, and Haldane had 1.653. Okay. And then because of that, when you combine them together, it's not beneficial for Garrison residents from a financial perspective, because you know, you end up with getting it's more expensive for the Garrison residents, and the amount of overall aid that would be allocated to both Garrison and Haldane actually goes down. But it would be beneficial to the residents of Haldane because they'd get a significant tax decrease. And you know, what would happen if they merged today? What's the difference? So the gap actually has increased since 1997. So now we're looking at, Garrison has a combined wealth ratio of 2.859, which if you put all 678 districts together, Garrison is 35th in the state for wealth in terms of this measurement. Haldane would be 97th, Putnam Valley 212th, and Lakeland 239.
Can I just ask about this wealth ratio? It's a combination of something plus property.
So it's
right?
adjusted gross income,
Okay, and then
the property wealth. Yep.
which in this town, we're still using numbers from the assessment, which was in the 90s. So, which obviously is something discussed in the town now. So it's even more egregious because we haven't had the reassessment.
Yeah, so that it's possible that if they did a reassessment, the gap would widen further. Yes. So, you know, if you look at those, one of the things that, if you read the stuff from New York State as far as consolidating districts together, what they do talk about is trying to make sure that the districts that merge together are similar as far as the wealth, because, you know, if you don't do that, it presents a lot of difficulties in doing this with the change in taxes. So really, the only two districts that could combine because they're similar in terms of wealth is Putnam Valley and Lakewood. You know, but on that list, really.
So just to clarify, if Garrison and Haldane combine, then their combined wealth ratio would probably be like a 2.
Well, it would go up from Haldane's number and
So
be
this-
lower than Garrison.
The total state aid that we receive would go down.
Right.
As a group, and so Haldane's budget would have to make that up by raising their taxes.
So when they did this study in 1999, what they said is it would go to the flat rate for per pupil per foundation aid. And at the time, I don't know what it says in there, but it's like, I don't know, $400 or something like that. And they talk about it being,
Haldane had 653. Garrison is 400.
right. Now, if you look at the selected aid ratio for Garrison, and you look at it for Haldane is 3,000. And if you use what is selected for Garrison, it's $500. So if it works exactly the same way as it shows on the report in 1999, instead of getting $3,000 per pupil, the combined district that would be left would get $500 per pupil. And that would be a significant change, obviously, which I don't calculate here as to what that would be, because we need to verify that everything works exactly the same as it did then. Right now, currently, Garrison gets about $2,100 per pupil because it's been gotten aid increases, hold harmless aid increases over every year. They get a certain percentage that keeps adding on to it. Or basically 300% of the formula.
This would remove the hold harmless increases we've had as a district.
Yeah, I think so, yes. So what we can basically conclude on what we know is because the combined wealth ratios are further apart now than they were in 97, it's most likely that it would not be advantageous to the residents of Garrison in terms of aid and obviously the increase in the tax rates. And this is just some information about how they calculate the combined wealth ratio. So there's a lot of factors that are associated with it. And then they look at, and it's using information from 2019 for adjusted gross income. So it's not a lot of lag associated with it. This is for the current year. This is for 23-24. That's the numbers are based on 2020 valuations and 21-22 total wealth pupil units. So how many students, how much money is assigned to how many students in terms of wealth, and then property value, and then the ratio. So this is just how the state calculates it.
So what Justin, what you were talking about is line 3, right? The actual valuation.
Yeah, actual valuation of property per total wealth pupil unit. Yeah. So
At the end?
yeah, I think that's it. We didn't look at building aid, but
Would the building aid change? Because I know
the building aid would change, and it would be an increase on top of whatever Haldane's rate is. There would be an incentive on top of that, but it doesn't look backwards. So anything that Garrison borrowed in the past would still get the same rate as what it got, which is we're at 10%.
so it could help with Haldane's upcoming capital
Yeah.
projects, but it can't impact our capital projects that we've already done.
Correct. It would just affect projects going forward.
Good.
And this is why they looked at it when they did, because they were looking at it before they built the middle school. That's what this was from. Was because that's the time when you would do it, is before you're going to spend a big dollar, not after you spend it. No.
you.
So just to step back in all of this, your estimation on this is that in year one, Garrison taxes would go up 27%, Haldane taxes would drop 20+%.
Yeah.
But in year
25%.
two, we go, Garrison taxes go 33 or higher, and Haldane taxes would go up as well.
Yeah, they'd go up too, yes.
And then how long do you think until Haldane taxes get back to the level where they are today?
It would take a few years, but they would get there.
There's a lot of variables in that too.
Right. No, I'm
Yes,
just-
well, it would depend, if they do their capital project, they would get up there quick.
It would be 27% the first year, then probably an additional 5 or 6% the next year.
Yeah, probably more like 8 more on top.
So just on that point, and I've asked this, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but I circulated previously that document about New York's school business officials, why mergers fail. It talked about the law allows for the boards to select a phase-in period for those tax rates over a period of time determined by the boards. So is your understanding that's not correct, or that the boards would not have the authority to set a time scale for the phase-in of the tax rates?
Well, I think that there would be some authority associated with it, but the problem is you're just dealing with a smaller bucket of money. Is really the issue. Is once you get after the first year, you end up with less money than you start with. So you still have to make that up somewhere.
Assuming that there's not, so the increases in foundational aid, is that the only state aid that you're aware of? Because what I'm thinking is if the state is willing to step in and fund more of the annexation costs, then theoretically that also provides you another pot of funds to provide time for the equalization or the phase in the rates.
Well, they fund the cost of studies, but they don't fund more than this reorganization.
You would get the building, it would change the building aid ratio, so if you want to do building foundation, but there's no other special.
No.
And I'm nervous about relying on the state funding anything. Because we've learned in the past that sometimes the aid doesn't come from the state. And so then we're back to asking the taxpayers.
Yeah, the most recent time for that was when the real estate crisis and the state imposed gap elimination adjustment. And what they did is they said, well, okay, you're supposed to get this much by the formula, but there's a budget gap, so we're just going to take that off the top, and you're not going to get it. So there is some recent issues, obviously, with New York State. If you think about budgets in the last couple of years, they had some revenue projections that didn't really match what it really is working out to be, and the next couple of budgets are going to be pretty tough. So the state did their full phase-in for the foundation aid changes in the current year. So there's no more big increases in foundation aid coming. And then the question is, okay, with all those increases that they just put in place, are they going to be able to sustain them? That's the question.
Thank you. Do I have any, before I move on to a board discussion, do we have other questions for Joe on the presentation? Thank you, Joe. I want to go on, well, what I want to do is sort of talk about what our next steps are as a board.
Okay.
I'll let Joe sit down.
Yeah.
I
might still have questions for Jeff.
Yeah, you can
You don't need
definitely.
to stand.
But
Yeah, we can still answer whatever.
so I want to
questions
sort of preface what we're going to do here today. We're not taking action. There's no vote set on this agenda. What we're looking for is to reach some consensus on how we move forward. So my understanding from the August meeting was we'd asked for the tax impact. And then maybe to look at staffing as well. I know we've heard from community members that they're interested in feasibility study. So I'm going to break down some of those questions that I think would be helpful for us to answer tonight. Beginning with, we have not formally reached out to the Haldane board. As we heard from council, if we wish to engage in a feasibility study, both boards have to agree to it. So the first question would be that do we want to formally reach out to the housing board and ask if they wish to consider dissolving their district or a merger? That's the first option we looked at tonight, or consider annexation. And then the next question I would want to look at maybe is, do we want that internal staffing study? What is the benefit versus risk analysis to that? That was discussed in the last meeting. And then I would also be interested in any other, I know we keep talking about the feasibility study. We've also mentioned some other ideas for what does the future of a Garrison Union Free School District look like if we are removing the question of annexation or merger. So my thought had been to take them sort of one at a time and really start talking about where we want to go with this information.
Can I just ask you, before I would want to reach out to the housing board, I want to know if our board was interested in a feasibility study. And I don't know that we've determined that.
Sure. And that is a good question.
And I think relatedly, your we preface going to the housing board and asking them if they'd like to dissolve or annex. But I think, like you're suggesting, the question is actually, do you want to do a feasibility study? Because that's actually what it is. Like, because both boards would have to come together to ask for a feasibility study. So I don't even think we're asking the board or our community yet to dissolve themselves. It's more like, besides this very thorough financial analysis, which is great, thank you. What are the educational and programming implications and things like that that would come out of a larger study?
So let's go around and talk about, as our board, what do we think of this? And is this something that we wish to invest our time in and move forward with?
So, I mean, I'll start. I've said it before. I don't think that we should be looking into a feasibility study, but I do think we should be looking into other shared services, and that's a very different conversation.
Do you think that looking at shared services would be a conversation with housing, or is it a conversation about, like, what do you think?
I think it's a conversation with us. It opens the door that we could have. Like, we have a great example tonight of the shared service of the special education program with Garrison. What kind of shared services might we have with Putnam Valley? What could we potentially have with Lakeland? Like, if we do shared services, it doesn't mean it has to only be with one district. And I would be interested in looking at what are some things that we think we could do in combination with other districts that would benefit both districts and be cost savings for both.
Do you think that's a study too? Like, do we have?
I think that's a study, and I
hire
think you would
someone?
hire somebody to do that.
For shared services.
For shared services. And you could look at technology. I know we recently moved to the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center as a money saving. I mean, what are some other ways that we could, what else should we do? But I personally, and with the numbers that were presented, I'm not convinced you'd save $1 million by merging, because I think transportation would be huge. Because you would need this building to educate students, and you'd be transporting students from much further away. So I am not in favor of the feasibility study, because I think that the tax burden would just be too great.
Are we going in order? I mean, I'll
Go.
add my 2 cents. So I'll say, first of all, I'm not convinced that annexation, and certainly not merger, is the right move for the district. But I continue to feel like there are questions, there are unanswered questions for me about what the implications would be. One of them, which I don't think is a question for Joe, I think it's a legal question, is what flexibility exists under the law to phase in tax impacts, and then how what others, I know that the state would provide additional funding. I guess that's the foundational aid, but I'm curious to know, to what extent the state would offer offsetting, resources that might reduce the cost of the district over the long term. So I guess, I still am interested in exploring it, particularly if the cost to the districts of a feasibility study are zero or minimal, recognizing there's also, of course, a time commitment. that's not insignificant and that I think we should take into account. I also, I'm interested in, I don't think anybody wants to see our tax rates increase 30%, but I'm wondering how a phased in tax increase would ultimately compare with expected increases in tax rates in Garrison, potentially, at some point, subject to an override. At the end of the day, where would we be with an annexation versus where we would potentially be with a reasonable projection on 10 years otherwise? And then I think there's also a community element of it that's important to consider, which is that, I think, Phillipstown is one community to a large degree, and maybe more so than it has been previously. My daughter went to childcare in Cold Spring and goes to camp in Cold Spring and has friends from Cold Spring. And I think increasingly we're seeing sports that are, community based. And I think there are, that's an important consideration. It's not purely financial. It may not outweigh the financial considerations, but I think that it's something that's worth considering. And then finally, I totally agree with Jen on the shared services. I think there's a lot to be gained in the shared services conversation. I think the combined special education program we've had this year is a great model. And, if we don't pursue the feasibility study, I definitely agree we should pursue these other shared services. But after an annexation, let's say, what other benefits of annexation would there be that we maybe just aren't currently thinking about? Transportation, I'm not sure, would be a cost increase. I wonder if there'd be cost savings. We have a sort of crazy transportation, situation now. We're going to have to go to electric buses in 2030 or whatever. How would that affect it? How many more kids can we keep in the district with an annexed district that has special education needs versus those that we have to send out of the district? So that's obviously a big cost driver. We're paying tuition for high school students. How do all these things come together? I don't know the answer, but that's why I wonder if there's no cost associated with a feasibility study, why not just find out the answer?
I think, I'll speak from my perspective. I think there's a couple of risks. I'm not in favor of a feasibility study or a merger or annexation. I think paying more to give our kids less, which is what I see, does not make sense to me. You remove high school choice, 40% of our kids do not go to Haldane. We haven't heard from those families. What does that mean? O'Neill, Putnam Valley as an option. We run our own sports teams here. When you combine, you have less opportunities for kids in sports. We have an environmental education program that doesn't exist in Haldane. My understanding under annexation is they would run their own curriculum and we would sort of get put into it.
You don't think that they would work with us on what we do, since we're neighbors?
There's no
We don't have any
guarantees.
say in that.
Right, no, but right, but
We have a very unique, and I also think we would look, my legal question is, the school forest is not owned by this district. We have an agreement. Does that agreement dissolve? And do we lose the school forest as part of this? Because my understanding is all legal agreements dissolve, which includes our collective bargaining. I understand the feasibility study is free. I think there's risk to it. I think as soon as we continue down this pathway, we are going to start to hurt the teachers union, because we're looking at dissolving jobs. And if this eventually goes to a vote in 2 or 3 years and it doesn't pass, how many jobs have we lost in between? What does this district look like? What talent have we attracted? So I think we're hurting the educational environment by looking at this.
I would just
And for to increase our taxes, I don't think it's going to happen.
I totally hear all those points. I think it's important, if we proceed on this path, to communicate that, we are exploring options, finding out information, not necessarily, the feasibility study is the next step to making the decision about, whether we think annexation is an appealing, option. And to me, the questions about legal contracts, about staffing, that's the whole reason you do the feasibility study. We're not looking at closing this building, which means that we're still going to need, the feasibility study would look at this, but to the extent that this building continues to exist, those educational jobs continue to exist.
They don't have any rights to them.
They don't have rights, and you don't need a third middle school staff. They already run a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school staff. They have teachers for that. We don't have that many kids. Their kids can just fit in. So,
Wait, I thought they didn't have enough space there. Our kids can be exhausted.
well, if I would assume,
But we don't know.
we don't know, that one of these buildings would be used for an elementary, middle school, which
Doesn't have to be like that,
increases
though.
space.
They could
There-
keep the school separate to exactly the way they are and just.
What is the benefit of that merger, though? Why would you do that, and how do you,
Oh, I don't know. I don't know
So
the
then we pay
benefits.
30%.
I don't
do we
have
pay
any,
more to have the same thing?
I don't have any of the information.
I also
That's
want to
what
point
I'm-
out,
That's what I'm
yeah, I also want to point out that we have kids who live in Garrison and Phillipstown, who go to Lakeland. We do not reclaim those. So I think that argument that these kids sports together and have grown up together excludes a certain group of people, no matter what you do, because we're not going to pull them back from Westchester.
I would agree with Sarah 100%. When I think about this, I think about how does this benefit the students of the district? I don't see any constituency of students that benefit from this. Students who want to go to Holiday go to Holiday. But the majority of our students do. There's still a strong link with Phillipstown. What I see is a constituency that wants a higher tax base, that thinks we need a higher tax base. And I think that's a different study. I don't see any other thing about this that would benefit our students in the short term. Perhaps long term in 25, 30 years, but in the short term, it does not benefit our students. What it does is it threatens teachers' jobs. Teachers start looking for new jobs, and we've seen it with override. It's the same thing with an override. The risk to an override is that you go into contingency, lose teachers. Teachers see that it's an unstable district. We're looking for a new superintendent. How many superintendents do you think want to sign up for moving into this district if they know it might go away in 3 years? I just don't see the constituency here among the students that benefits from this piece of it.
I hear you, and I think what I don't understand, I feel like I understand financial, because Joe just presented it well, and what I don't understand is how our programming and an educational environment can be improved by this, or not. And I just think we don't have those answers.
Reading through the feasibility studies, I haven't seen those questions answered in a feasibility study.
Are they only financial as well?
Quite frankly, I mean, I'd like to I think the educational piece.
Yeah.
Really, that work will be done by the superintendents, the principals, the directors. I don't see an outside consultant coming in and fully understanding the districts as well as our current people. It would be a lot of time, you'd have to almost create like a mock schedule. Jocelyn, but I do know, but just to your point earlier, I do believe Haldane, we looked at it in one of our, I think, our last budget, their class sizes are very small. So it is possible that, they can absorb one of our current grade levels, which would in turn reduce a teaching position. So we have some grade levels with 16 or 17 students, right? If they have 2 classes of 11 or 12, they could probably absorb them and eliminate a position, and there's a savings there. But again, that's assuming the Garrison community would support this. I think to Kent's point, you run a big risk, and I've had some conversations with our staff, both administrative, both the GTA, and I have to tell you, resumes will go out. And then someone said, I think Kent, not only a superintendent, if you had to replace people, who would you attract to a district that may possibly merge and the job may not be there a year or 2 down the road?
We know the answer to that.
But all of this
Someone who's
too for a
close to retirement.
35% or 30% tax increase, which honestly, you can't honestly tell me you think that's going to be something that has a 5% chance of passing. I mean,
We
haven't
haven't even gone
10,
there yet, yeah.
but really it's not like, well, it's a 5% tax increase,
wanna
but we
get
get all these
David.
benefits. It's 30%. And what is the benefit?
I want to give David a chance. to
Yeah, listen, my gut tells me this is an absolute dead end. I'm open to hearing arguments of where the benefits are to this community from either annexation or merger. but I don't feel them, I don't see them. I think what Jen said about shared services seems like it might be worth pursuing that. There might be some real value in doing that. But I just don't understand why there's a constituency in Garrison that wants to take on something that increases our tax burden by 30%.
I think what you're seeing is a reaction to the override and the fact that we really needed more money to fund the school. Now, we are now sitting on a $1.4 million surplus. That is a result, which from my mind, I know Finance Committee started meeting, we're nowhere near budget process, but I don't see how you even need an override going forward when we have 11% in unassigned fund balance, which is more than I've ever seen. So I think that is where this conversation started and is a valid point. And to that aspect, I'd like to see maybe reaching out to Donegan again for a 5-year, which is an external group. They're well known for doing 5-year financial analysis to see what the district looks like. We also have spoken about a demographic study to see what does this district look like, because I'm really proud of the work we've done here. We've built things that don't exist in these other neighboring districts, including our pre-K, including environmental education. And I don't want to lose what we built just because we had a bad financial year. And we've also worked so hard to write it. We are now in a place where with the lobbying, with the extra funding we've brought in, as long as we continue to be mindful about our spending, that the lines in the budget, the lines of what we're spending, and we continue down that path, I think we'll be in a healthy place. I don't think that 1.4 billion is like, let's go out and add a whole bunch of positions or something. I think it's really a sort of, all right, we're back where we need to be. But it doesn't move me to say like, all right, this district needs to dissolve. This district needs to, it moves me to say, all right, now let's look at the next year, 5-year financial plan. Let's look at what I don't want to be distracted from the educational programs we're offering. That's not what I think the work of the board this year should not be on this. And from what I've looked at from other districts, this is an extensive amount of work to get to the point where you're doing the feasibility study in terms of reaching out to Haldane. How does this impact Haldane's timeline for their capital project? They should delay that if it's a real viable option, because the building aid ratios will change. Is that something they wish to do? That would be a question for them. So, I think the feasibility study, while it sounds great because it's free, does have come with risk.
But I
and
don't
it's not
think it's free.
necessary.
It's not free.
That's not why it sounds great.
It's a lot of work by a lot of people around this table and in this school district. And I also think we should be looking at our special education programs. I don't know the last time the evaluation was done in special education programs.
This break before call started, we had an outside person come
But
in.
now you have a whole other structure.
We do.
I'm sorry, and I think that's somewhere that could be a real great place for us to partner even further with other school districts.
You talked about a demographic projection, and I do think that's important. I mean, that's a question in my mind. But what's the given the cost of property in this town, the difficulty in attracting young parents? What does that say about the future of this district? I mean, I think we should just know that. I think we should have that information. Doesn't have to be part of a feasibility study of annexation or merger, but I do think that's important for us to have a sense of.
And you talked about that before in terms of getting up through BOCES.
So, for example, that kind of a demographic study or the 5-year financial planning study, how do we act on that? Because we've talked about it a lot, but haven't yet maybe thought, and I don't know if it's part of the budgeting process.
So there's
to add it to the budget.
So there's a couple of different ways that you can do both of those things. Donegan, that wrote this report, would give us a proposal on how much it would cost to do it, and the board could decide to do that and go ahead and act on it. There is Eastern Suffolk BOCES is one of the big ones that does the demographic studies. You say, okay, give us a proposal for doing a demographic study, and it's probably going to be $12,000–$14,000, and they do it. You can do it yourself using. There's ways to do it. the difficulty comes into, and one of the things when you look at Garrison in particular is you don't necessarily have, a lot of stuff is based upon live births of kids living in the district. What tends to happen with Garrison is once people have children, they show up. So some of the things that the assumptions that you use for demographic studies don't work out that well when you apply it to Garrison, but they will use the live births that take place in the towns that are part of Garrison, and they will use the information about when a student is in first grade, how often is it that the student makes it all the way to 8th grade here, and they look at all those numbers over the past, and then they project out 5 and 10 years out into the future what they think the enrollment's going to be.
Joe, do you have access to data that would enable you to make demographic projections?
Say no.
That's enough.
No, say no.
But I mean, is it accessible?
Yes.
But I think, yeah, I think it would be something we could look to above season. To answer your question, nothing moves quickly. When we ask for things, I understand there is frustration that, when we want a presentation, we do need to put it together. It takes time. to
Wait,
get them.
I'm not saying that. The 5-year financial plan was a board goal 3 years ago. Yeah, so I'm not criticizing this. This was amazing that you did all this in 2 months. I'm saying that for 3 years because
We talked about it.
So can we request quotes for those 2 studies?
So
Yep.
do I have consensus to put out? That would be what we're asking for there is consensus, put out an RFP or a request for proposals for both demographic study and a 5-year financial analysis.
If you go through Rosie's and I'll put out.
Right, you just
Okay.
ask for a number, which will give it to us.
Okay, we're comfortable with just going through the BOCES on
Demographics, yeah.
demographics. Donegan is not through BOCES, though.
No.
It is a separate group that we've worked with in the past that I believe has a solid reputation in this area.
So for professional services, you are allowed to use relationships that you have with vendors that you work with. I mean, Donegan currently does the financial advising for our borrowing, and they did a lot for issuing the bands and the bonds, and also for doing the calculations for when the district went for the referendum in 2019. So when you have an already established relationship with them and they're a professional provider, you can just ask for a number. And then you can choose to do that number, or if you want to do, after that, you decide you want to do an RFP, we can do that.
Are we comfortable with going with the company we've been using for bond counsel on this? Do you want to see their number and then decide if we want the RFP, or would you like Donegan?
I think you mean when you say the number, the budget, how much it would cost?
How much it would cost to do the 5-year analysis?
Yeah,
That's what we're
I certainly
talking
think we should get that number first. Yeah. Right.
about. Okay, let's get that one.
and I heard David say the shared services exploration. Is that part of one of those or is that a separate thing?
Can Donegan do that?
I don't know. I can ask. I think that's not a typical thing you would ask them, but we'll ask.
What BOCES
Can BOCES do?
Well, BOCES, that's their entire
What they
mission,
do.
right? is
Yeah,
to share
shared
services.
services.
But I don't know that they come in and do evaluations of what they recommend.
It seems self-serving and self.
But I would be in favor of also asking for a quote from the BOCES for the demographic study.
That's just the one that sticks in my head that I know that they do it. It's easier.
Okay. That looks at those 2 items, but then from what I'm hearing in terms of what are our next steps specifically with what we've seen tonight in where we're going, sounds like we do not have consensus to move forward on a feasibility study at this time.
I think that's clear.
Great.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say quickly about the fund balance that we learned from the auditors. I think that like they made the point, this is a lot of one-off things that we got, and you had questions about where to replenish.
Yeah.
And so I think it points to the fact that we haven't reached one of our budget goals, which is to have our revenues meet our expenditures. So this is still going to be, even though we have that balance, it's still a challenge to try to achieve that goal, if it's a goal this year. I have no idea what the finance committee will do. We want that to be a goal. But, I mean, I'm happy, but I do think that it's not like it's sweet sailing every year from now on. But
No, there's definitely always
Yeah.
challenges every year, and we did get, you know, Carl and I advocated for a lot of additional funding, and the rest of the board also. And that funding came in.
Yeah.
And there were grants that were untapped by other districts, like mental health grant, that other districts had the opportunity to get, and they didn't necessarily ask for it, but we said, however much you'll give us, we'll take. And that, you know, that saved $130,000 of expense that we
I
didn't
mean,
have to spend.
almost all of that unrestricted is a result of all of that work.
Yeah,
that you
there's
all
a
did.
lot of that work. There were some special education students that we budgeted for that didn't actually attend. But we didn't know that they weren't going to attend. There were legal issues we thought we were going to have. We didn't have. You know, didn't have the capital project wasn't finished, so we didn't have to pay for the ongoing upkeep of this HVAC stuff because it's not all signed off yet. And then we didn't have that expense in the budget, and nobody thought that interest rates were going to go from 0.5% to 5%. You know, all those things just conspired together to give us a really good result.
Yeah.
And we can't guarantee that that's going to happen every year, and we can't guarantee that we can budget within a couple percent every year and line it up. The year prior, we were like right on. You know, I told you how much we were going to spend, and we spent that much, and revenue was in $50,000 of next year. But this year, we had a lot of things break our way that we did.
Yeah.
And if I could just add, and I personally, I am in favor of doing a 5-year plan, but for all the things Joe just rattled off, that is why the farther out you go with forecasting, the less accurate it becomes. Look, even in just 1 year, all those things happened that we really were uncertain about. There were so many uncertainties, so many variables. So you start going out 3, 4, 5 years with projections, because I've done them before, and it becomes really challenging to be accurate. But that being said, I still think it's a good process, and there is good information I can receive from the financial forecast.
It'll show you where the gaps will start, and what some of your risks may be.
Okay, and in terms of, I know there have been community members reaching out to the Haldane board. I just wanted to also say that I did let the Haldane board president know we were having this presentation tonight. They were invited to attend if they had the time. Carl spoke with Dr. Valente as well. The Haldane board finds that they do not have an opinion on this and have not met to discuss it. And I think that's similar reaction you had from Dr. Valente.
Yeah, same response from Phil Valente.
So it's really the ball's in our court if we were to move out, but it sounds like at this point we are not, and we have something to move forward. So I'm gonna, in the interest of time, unless there's any other questions or comments, keep us moving on the agenda. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Joe, for the tax impact report. Next, we have a discussion on the superintendent search process. So what you all should have received, there's now a folder created, Dusty, for all the board members to look at. So far, we have a proposal from the group district-wise we worked with last time, and BOE sent over their information. We can put out RPMs, we don't have to. There've been a number of other firms who've reached out, just you can include all their brochures. Many of them are based not in New York. So I think one of the questions you want to look at, and David and I actually looked for search firms for the last time, was whether you want to go with a local company who really, or do you want to go with one of these national search companies? And determine we liked a local company like District-Wise who has real connections in the area and is based here. But I'm happy to gather more information. I would say that I would be in favor of moving this timeline along, because one of the benefits we have with Carl's retirement in September is that we will, be able to go out soon and probably get ahead of other people looking for a superintendent. So I think it benefits us to start thinking about where we're going to go. Does anyone have any questions or opinions on which way we want to go in terms of a search?
I'd like to ask Carl what your recommendation is in terms of local versus national search.
You know, David, I've only gone through the process as a candidate, so never as a board member, you know, from that perspective. So I think there's pros and cons to both. You know, some districts do decide they want to do a national search. I think there's some benefits to that. Sometimes people are willing to relocate. This is a people area. You may be able to attract people, but there is a lot of benefit to a local firm that really vets the candidates. And I can tell you, having gone through the process with district-wise, they're incredibly thorough. And you know that I think that's part of what you pay for, and they have a very strong network in the New York, tri-state area.
I think whichever way I would say you could go local based on the quality of the candidates we have for the interim position. And I was surprised with, I don't know where you advertised, but where we advertised, I think it was Niskus, right? And this, I mean, we had a lot of candidates very quickly that had, not what we were looking for an interim, but maybe what we were able to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be interested in your recommendations, Sarah, since you've been through it before.
I really liked District-Wise the last time we worked with them. I felt that they took the time to get to know our community. And when they said they were gonna take information from teachers, they set up not only did they do forums with the teachers and parents and community members, they also set up an email where you can send in everything. So it could be anonymous, if you were to say something negative, where you felt more comfortable that way. And then they compiled these reports for the board members that I found helpful. Now we did ours when COVID hit. So before COVID hit, they came in and really met with us and sort of held our hand through the process. I felt very prepared for interviews because they sort of trained us as board members on what questions to ask, how to interview. I thought they were very objective, which I really liked. They didn't have a horse in the race per se. They weren't like, this is the candidate we really want you to pick. It was our decision. They were presenting facts, and that I really enjoyed. Jocelyn, you're part of that too, right?
Yeah, I was.
And Kent, you worked with them for the principal.
Yes.
We used them a second time for the principal search. So
I thought they were good. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with educational search firms, but
yeah, I thought they were good. The other two David and I met with did seem like it was like you met the top person and then they send it there, which might work really well, but it felt like you were going to get handed off to somebody else.
It sounds like we were 2 for 2 with this company.
Yeah, they were.
Where's that?
Let's go for 3 for 3.
If we're comfortable with that, I can reach out to Bob and but
That's why I like working with them, but I do wonder why we wouldn't go with BOE. I mean, why not? Come on, Jen.
That's a company.
yeah.
I mean, why not go with them?
My concern is the depth of the background. I thought they did District-Wise did a really good job, and does BOCES really put in that same level of depth into pulling up everything? They also have relationships with these people, so I wonder if they would have sort of a horse in the race, because I recognize that they have networks and they have relationships with certain candidates. But we use them. We have used them in the past. I believe we used them for the principal before Allison, and I believe for the search. I wasn't on the board then, but when they found Laura Mitchell, our previous.
Can District-Wise be asked to ask their search more broadly than and maybe?
Yeah, when I said local, I meant they are physically, these people are physically local, like they can search nationwide. I find it useful to have a search firm who's based in New York where the people who are doing that are not crazy.
The idea of getting a search firm telling them that you're interested in for diversity in that.
I mean, they're in Long Island, I think, right?
Yes, they now have someone who's actually on the Chappaqua board who is there, works for them and is in Westchester. So that would probably be one of the people we would work with, both Joanne and Bob again. I like working with them and I found them very helpful to us. So I think it's money well spent in terms of it, you know.
Let's make this stuff, let's just do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And with that on, I will reach out to Bob and Joanne. So the way this will work is the next step is on the November agenda. We will have a contract for the board to vote on and review with them. And following that, they will come in and meet with us. Hopefully they will be here for that November meeting. We can move and start meeting with them immediately, but I need to,
Like literally that night.
yes.
Like exactly.
I'd already given, yeah, I talked to them and that's what they suggested, if we can make that work. It will depend on what else, we have an executive session.
Because we only have one board meeting.
We do, I mean, we've had a lot more, and I have a feeling, guys, we're gonna, as this process kicks in, we're gonna add more. All right, that brings me to public comment. So public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-up sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. I don't have anyone listed, but if you'd like to sign in and speak, you're welcome to. Safely, if you guys want. Okay. I'm going to go ahead then and close public comment. We will have another opportunity later in the meeting. Next up, I have the acceptance of the minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular business meeting of October 4th, 2023 as presented. May I have a motion, please? Thank you.
Second.
Anyone have any questions or comments on the minutes as presented? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. All right. Next, I have accept treasurer's report and claim audit report. All right. Be resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the treasurer's report for June 2023 and July 2023 as presented, and further accepts the claim audit report for September 2023 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
So second.
Okay. Do I have any questions for Joe on the treasurer's reports or claim audit reports as presented? No questions? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Now we're going to move on to the personnel items. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So second.
Carl, do you want to speak to these?
Sure, we just have 2 new paraprofessionals for our special ed program. It did open the year staffed with substitute teachers, but now we are very pleased with the work that those people are doing, and we're prepared to recommend them for more permanent roles with us. Additionally, the teaching assistant, there's an MOA that changes or adjusts the salary schedule for teaching assistants to make it more consistent with other school districts in our region as far as their compensation. So the GTA, we thank them. They recognize that our schedule was much higher and actually, and we have something that we think is more aligned right now.
Just to be clear, we approved one, but this is the like the last meeting, which you were not with us here. But this is a revised draft because one of the numbers were flip-flopped on the salary.
Yes.
By $1, so it was off by $1.
There were just 2, there were actually 2 typos in it, nothing, significant change. It was just a dollar amount, and I think there was a clerical typo. Okay, so thank you, Sarah, because I did forget that I wasn't here. So yes, this is a correction of that amount. And then I just want to say thank you to all the parents that are helping out with Pizza Fridays. We have a few new volunteers, Tori and Tara Braccio and Julian Wynn. Thank you to all of you for willingness to come in and serve the kids.
Okay. Very excited Brian is doing it. So. All right. Do you have any questions for Carl on the personnel consent agenda as presented? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. We now move to the second public comment section. I'm not going to read the paragraph again, and as we no longer have an audience, I'm going to continue on. All right.
That's shitty.
Did you wish to speak, sir?
No.
All right, I'm going to move on to
Audience.
board member comments and another discussion. Jocelyn? No. David?
Yeah, I didn't think we could get this earlier. Yeah, I have one thing to say, which is that since this is honor a school board member speech, I just really struck by what a terrific word president you are. You do a very, very good job. And we really appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
Very sweet. Jennifer?
So having just completed all of my Board of Education training, I feel very lucky to be on this board. Experience at those trainings, and so I would like to echo what Dave said. You do a great job, Sarah, and keep us in line. So thank you. I also wanted to just take a minute and thank Joe for that report, and also thank Mr. Yap for filling in as our acting superintendent in the absence of our interim superintendent.
Thank you, David. Dan?
I would also like to echo Jen's comments. Thank you to Sarah for the great leadership you provide, as well as to Joe for putting together the report. And thank you to the entire board for the spirited conversation about the feasibility study and annexation. I think it's important that we are able to have these conversations, that we can air out the concerns, that we can be responsive to members of the community who feel very passionately about it. I think it's also important, particularly to our teachers, to say that it's not a reflection at all on anybody's, thoughts about the quality of the education that takes place in this building. It's, I think, part of a shared desire to we can and have as much information as we can have to make sure that we continue to do what is in the best interest of the district moving forward. So thank you again to everybody for allowing us to have that conversation.
Thank you. Ken?
I think you had enough of a reward tonight getting the audit report on school board of education. I don't need to say anything more about your wonderful work. I will just say thank you to Joe and Carl. The information based on the report, there's a lot of emphasis on this being a one-time thing and this and that. It's a one-time thing. 95% of the fact is that you guys made it happen. You pushed for these things, you found these things, you made that happen. So while they might not be recurring year over year, it's because of the hard work that you guys put in. So I can't thank you guys enough for that, and I think the community can't thank you guys enough for that. We're very lucky to have you both.
I don't want to be a downer, but with all this good feeling here, but in all the years that I've spent working in the television industry, one thing that I learned is that if you start out with a very large audience and you end up with one or two people, you don't last very long.
We get to come back every 2 weeks anyway. You know what it is? I think it's just because the audit presentation too early. Thank you all. I do want to say it is my pleasure to serve you all, and I agree wholeheartedly that these debates are so important. And the more that is said in public that we can share these opinions. I almost wish the student government kids or the 8th grade class representatives stayed and watched, because I think this is the type of debate they should see. These people sharing ideas, really thinking and listening to one another.
I'll make Riley watch this for me. Discount our millions of viewers on YouTube. Or later.
You know, that's true. That's true. And hopefully some of them are students, because I do hope that their debates are as civil as the ones we have here. All right, thank you all. Unless there's any further comment.
We just wanted to add one thing. Yesterday, I hosted a assistive technology summit at PNW BOCES. Had about 100 people come from across the state. And Mr. Yak did an amazing presentation on kinesthetic learning that got rave reviews and evaluations. So he was able to showcase the sensory pathway that's here at Garrison, the one that's downstairs, and we have a lot of places that are jealous and want to replicate this. I just want to thank you for that presentation yesterday.
All right. Anything else? No executive session? So we're going to move to adjournment. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adjourns the regular meeting of October 18th, 2023. May I have a motion, please? Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. All right, guys, please log out.